Counsell returns, and the Brewers fans let him have it. And the Brewers offense, they explode late, and the Brewers win game 1 of the series. All that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers.
You are Locked On Brewers, your daily Milwaukee Brewers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Boy, what a day to be out at AmFam Field today. There's been so many terrific days to be out there, but, you know, you got a day like today, rain in the area, clouds, Memorial Day weekend. The weather was not real good for a lot in Wisconsin, except for watching Brewers baseball. Good to have you along. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day, and the Brewers get the job done. And some thoughts about Craig Counsell making his return to AmFam Field. All that coming up here on Locked On Brewers. Again, longtime sportscaster here in the state of Wisconsin, Chuck Freeman. Get me on Twitter. Hit me up at Chuck Freeman, Freimund. Also, you get the podcast on Google, Spotify, Apple, the audio platforms, wherever you download your podcast every day. Whatever podcast you get, Locked On Brewers is there. We're the number one Brewer podcast on the internet because the great tradition of Brewers fans who made this the number one podcast on the internet. And of course, go to YouTube, search Locked On Brewers, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. That'll alert you every time we drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel, make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. All right. Counsell comes back. They show a little video montage before the game of Craig Counsell's days with the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, I think the Brewers did this on purpose because that just drew extra heat to Counsell. When they threw that on the scoreboard, I'm like, oh boy, you know, that's Counsell was going to get even more heat. What did the Milwaukee Brewer organization expect when they put that up on the board was going to happen? Honestly, I mean, that just added fuel to the fire of Brewer fans to see them up there on the scoreboard. He was not going to get the warm reception. And we'll get into all that coming up here. But I just thought that was bizarre. I didn't expect the Brewers to do that to, they're in the pregame. Craig Counsell, welcome back. And all of a sudden they show his, as a player and as a manager and all that. And the fans, let him have it. Let him have it. That was like 6 months of pent-up frustration. But hey, you know what? There's no reason to be angry. The Brewers are the ones who are in first place. Things are working out just terrific with our current manager, Pat Murphy. All right. So, yeah, there's nothing to be angry about. I guess I just don't understand on a couple of levels the anger of Brewers fans regarding this because so many of you didn't like Counsell to begin with. That's what I understand. So many of you wanted Counsell out. So when he does leave, you get mad about it. That's what I don't get. But he goes to Chicago. So if you think he's such a bad manager, you'd want him to go to the rivals. Why wouldn't you? If Counsell would have got fired at the end of the season, people would have been more than half of the people who are Brewer fans would have been happy about it. I don't get it since the guy, led them to various postseason appearances. Now the postseason record wasn't great. So I don't get it. If he had been fired, y'all would have been happy, but he goes to the Chicago Cubs on his own and you're ticked off. You would think, okay, if he's going to your rival, good, let him, you can have him. That's the way I've seen Twitter, man. Most of you guys can't stand Craig Counsell to begin with as a manager. So I don't know why you're so upset. So he goes to the Cubs and people are all ticked off. I don't get it. I don't get that's the part I don't understand. If we hated him so much, why are we so mad that he's at the rival? Okay. If we want him gone so badly, you'd love him at the rival. Counsell before the game was asked, now I don't believe this for 1 second, was asked if, how he felt about it. any unexpected emotions. He said, no, we're just out here to win a game. Now, that either backs up my argument on these guys really don't care where they are managing or coaching or playing or wherever. They just want a job. They just want a job. Let's take, for instance, the Bucks coach, Mike Budenholzer, 2 years ago, let him do an NBA title. Well, 3 years ago, let him do an NBA title, beating Phoenix in the NBA championship, in the NBA finals. And now he's the coach of the Phoenix Suns. And he was, like, oh, great to be here in Phoenix. Oh, I love this organization. He just beat him in the NBA finals a couple of years ago. But that's it. These guys, wherever the job is, who is going to pay me money? Where am I going to get the best? What is going to be best for me and my family? And we've been over this with Counsell. Come on. What would you rather, if company A down the street, okay, say what you want about the Chicago Cubs. They're a storied franchise. Yeah, we all hate the Cubs. But, when they come calling as a broadcaster, look at Pat Hughes, the broadcaster for the Brewers for many years next to Bob Uecker. He went to Chicago. When Pat Hughes sticks his head on the broadcast booth, we're not going after him. He's become a Hall of Fame broadcaster with the Cubs. So I don't begrudge a guy 1 minute in any walk of life from improving where he is, whether it's going to another radio station, a competitor, or whatever, sales, whatever job it is. I don't begrudge it at all. And I think it's kind of a little hypocritical when we're in today's society too, where, hey, we're trying to get the best for our families here. Anybody would do what he did. He wouldn't say, oh, no, loyally, I'm staying here and taking a $3 million pay cut. Of course not. Of course not. And he talked about, before the game, about David Stearns. When David Stearns said, you're with an organization for a while, then you think, look at that little island over there. Maybe I should swim to it. Now, I've often heard people say, when you get dumped from an organization or a company or whatever, and you swim across, and you see this island over there, and you swim across and you see that island, and it's like, oh, this is better over here. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way. I mean, Counsell may fail in Chicago, but still, he took a chance. He took a risk at a chance to, manage the Chicago Cubs. Okay, whether we like it or not, a storied franchise, a storied national brand, a national brand. When Tom Crean left Marquette to coach Indiana, we didn't like the way he left. Okay, but it was Indiana at the time. Indiana was a brand. Now it's been down. Indiana basketball's been down for a number of years, but it's Indiana. As Tom Crean said, it's Indiana. It's the Chicago Cubs. So yeah, it's a brand. Again, doesn't always work. It wasn't like he left the Brewers for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He left for a big-time job, okay? A big-time job that's got a lot of history, a lot of losing history, but a lot of history. But he said David Stearns made him think about, staying at an organization too long. And he went to the New York Mets. Another story. You can't blame Stearns for going to the New York Mets. Okay, you can't blame Counsell for going to the Cubs. And I'm not, the fans, and Counsell said this, fans could boo and all that. Hey, we're on the same side here. We're on the same team, the Milwaukee Brewers. Me and you guys out there watching this. Okay, so I always think the manager, the coach on the team gets a little bit more credit than he really deserves. It's the players. It's the Jimmies and Joes. Okay. Yeah, the manager has something to do with it, keeping a good clubhouse, making decisions and all that. But ultimately, it's winning and losing. Hey, let's say Monty Williams. I'm going to use a basketball reference again. Monty Williams, the coach of the Suns, had that thing humming a couple of years ago. He goes to Detroit. He wins, 14 games this past year. And how they give him a big contract. But, I mean, he doesn't have any talent on the team. He's got young talent, got some players, but still, it's all about getting you some talent. Joe Torre would not have had success in New York. He had no success with the Braves, okay? He would have had no success with the Yankees if they didn't have some Hall of Famers on that team, okay? So In Milwaukee, you have to make good on what you have. And right now, Pat Murphy is. And Craig Counsell, for a number of reasons, has. We don't like to look at it that way, but we all know deep inside, Milwaukee is playing. The Brewers are playing with one arm tied behind their back when it comes terms to, attracting talent, getting players to play here, having the resources to play here. The Brewers have done what they have. Hey, they're in first place right now. I'm as pleased as hell that they're in first place. Okay, they won game 1 of this series. And, the Brewers, I think, have done a great job putting things together and competing. Now, I get disgusted as much as anybody else because the Brewers haven't won a World Series ever and have been to one in 54 years. We talked about this last week. But I know what they're up against. We know that. I don't want to use that as an excuse, but we know that. Okay, but still doesn't make me happy that they have won a World Series title yet, and that they have won a playoff series since Colorado in the wild card round in 2018. Let's hope that changes. Now they're 31-22, playing some really good baseball right now. 4.5 up on the Cubs after winning that game. Counsell, one more thing. He said, "I can't tell fans how they should feel," and that's true. I can't tell you can't tell me how I should feel as a fan or how I should feel about Counsell. And, I can't tell you about what opinion you have. If you wake up in the morning and you felt like you had to go to the game on Monday and rip Counsell, okay, that's your prerogative being a fan. If that's the way you take it, that's it. I'm just telling you the way I took it. I wasn't going to go to rip the guy. I'm not, because of everything I just explained earlier in the show. But, Counsell said before the show, it's a beautiful day. Well, it wasn't a beautiful day. He said it's Memorial Day. People got the day off. Let's just enjoy the day. Okay, which is true. Memorial Day, let's enjoy the day. 42,000 fans out at AmFam Field. Thought it was great. And the Brewers, more importantly, came up with a 5-1 win. We're going to get to that coming up next here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Chuck Friedman here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers is brought to you by SupplyHouse. Get supplies from the site that was made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is a reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop the complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, I should say, and get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help from an order? Well, their expert support and industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business, and they'll help you out. Talk to a real person every single time. Pros in the skilled trades can get competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free trade master program. Every trade master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounts on every order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/T-M and order plumbing, HVAC, and supplies, electrical supplies from anywhere. Just a few clicks. SupplyHouse.com. Coming right back on Locked On Brewers. All right. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We get us on Google, Spotify, Apple. We're on all the major downloads. Get us on YouTube. Search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. Alert you every time drop an episode here on Locked On Brewers. And, of course, throw me your comments on DMs. You want to tweet at me or whatever. You have comments on the show, what you want to see more of, like less of, whatever. Chuck Friedman, Freimund. This show is not merely just a recap. I'm not going to recap, inning by inning, out by out. It's analysis. I've been watching and covering this team for 44 years. Yeah, I started when I was 14 years old. That's a different story, which I explained on another radio station the other day. Incidentally, I'll be on ESPN Lacrosse on 105.5 at 4:30 today on Tuesday, and the Bill Michaels Show statewide at 11:30 today, talking Brewers baseball with both of their great hosts. All right. The Brewers did win 5-1. Classic Brewer game. This is our era of Brewer baseball where runs and hits are at a premium. We've been down that road for so many times, and here we are, scoreless duel going in the bottom of the 8th. Robert Gasser pitched great through 6 innings, was fantastic, 6+, gave up a couple of base hits to start the 7th, and then Brian Hudson helps him out, works out of the jam. Hudson lowers his ERA to 0.59. That's the best ERA of any reliever in the National League, 0.59. Brian Hudson, who won't get a sniff for the All-Star game, obviously, because you know how tough it is for relievers to get into the All-Star game, especially middle relievers. But if anybody right now in baseball deserves to be in the All-Star game, Brian Hudson has been a huge boost to the Milwaukee Brewers. And again, when I look at All-Star appearances and I look at postseason awards, I look at how many big moments. How does this guy contribute? Not just a 0.59 ERA, but how many times, like today's game, comes in with runners at first and second, doesn't allow any of the inherited runs, and allows the Brewers to go on and eventually score in the 8th inning. So Brian Hudson, pitching like an all-star, but he won't be an all-star because there's not much credit given to the middle relief job, although we all know in baseball how big that is, especially in recent years. Turang got caught stealing, broke a 36 consecutive stolen base streak. That's incredible. Turang will start a new one. There's no doubt about it, but he was caught stealing. Good to see he was in the lineup. Turang. The big moment in this game, though, 8th inning, after Willie Contreras with runners at first and second, hit a ground ball to third that was booted. 1 run scores. And then Willie, on a 3-0 count, swinging all the way, drills one to center field. He got the pitch he liked. He got the green light. Perfect. Of course, we could all say it was a great call out of 3-0. Swinging on 3-0, because I know if he swings at 3-0 and wraps into double play, like, oh, what's he doing swinging at 3-0? No, I think that was the choice for it. And of course, hindsight's 2020. He hit a 3-run home run. But Willie muscled up. And to me, that was the loudest AmFam has been this season. When he rockets that home run, shuts up the Cub fans, and the Brewer fans were going crazy. And as Willie was rounding the bases, man, wasn't that a great moment? There's been a few great moments so far early this season, but that's number one for me. On Counsell's return, so far, the first 2 months of the season, Adames hitting that 3-run jack in the 8th inning. Man, just gives you, even right now, hours later, just gives me goosebumps just thinking about that. And their starter, Justin Steele, went the first 7 on 3 hits. Of course, pitchers on high pitch counts can't pitch into the 8th inning anymore. That's the golden rule. So as soon as the Cubs went to their bullpen with Leiter, thought, okay, here we go. Put a couple of guys on, and there went the Milwaukee Brewers. They also booed Counsell when he came out to relieve Leiter in the 8th inning. So all in all, Brewers now 31-22. They get the job done. Big win for the Brewers. And 4.5 game lead on the Cubs. Keep this thing going. You realize if they sweep the Cubs, I don't expect them to sweep the Cubs, but the math says the Cubs could leave town 7.5 games out. Now, taking 3 or 4 would be nice. That would mean taking 2 of the next 3. I'll take that. But how about Robert Gasser and how terrific he was and continues to be? This is the best outing. Best outing. I thought. Cubs at a big moment. Rookie, 42,000 people breathing down his neck, and Gasser delivers, outdueling Steele. But Steele was great too. Justin Steele was great for the Cubs. Brewers have problems against Cubs starting pitching this year. I think the last 25 innings or so, they have not had a hit against the Cubs starting pitching. That's got to change. That's got to change. The Brewers do even up the season series with the Cubs at 2-2, dropping 2 or 3 earlier this month in Chicago on a weekend series. And now they've won in a row against the Cubs after dropping the back 2 games in that series against the Cubs. So 4.5 game lead. Interesting right now, the NL Central. We're going to talk about that coming up here a little bit because some teams are creeping in a little bit on the Milwaukee Brewers. The Brewers are not only moving themselves, keeping themselves in first place, but There's another thing I noticed with the Cubs today, thanks to somebody on Twitter. We're coming right back here on Locked On Brewers. Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Game Time. Game Time is where I get all my Brewers tickets. If I want to go to a game, especially late, like an hour before game time is where it is. Those prices start dropping because people are trying to get rid of their tickets. Go to Game Time, man, especially an hour, half hour before the game. You got 3 games coming up this week for the Cubs. Got 2 night games and an afternoon game Thursday. Man, download the Game Time app. Last minute deals. Save up to 60% on buying last minute for not only sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all that is there. There's flash deals, zone deals, all in pricing. You get the total up front, so you don't keep on pressing, and then you get to the final total, and they added a few more bucks onto it. You're not going to get that. They have the lowest price guaranteed. Game Time will credit you 110% of the discounts of the price if you find something elsewhere. Terms apply. Download the Game Time app, create the account, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Again, download the Game Time app, create an account, use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB, $20 off your first purchase. So you're buying 2 tickets for the Brewers and Cubs this week, let's say for $70, 2 $35 tickets you might be able to get. You get $20 off that, so you're paying $50. Not bad. Download the Game Time app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed with Game Time. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. Craig Counsell. I mean, if he was bothered by anything today, which I don't think he was, in the locker room after the game, bothered by his team losing. But the boos and all that, no, wasn't. Now, I'll tell you, when Paul Molitor came back, and this was a few years later, too, when Molitor came back in 94 and 95, they continued to boo Molitor. And I remember I went up to him in the locker room, and Tom Pippins from Fox 6, who was a friend of Molitor, went up to him. We interviewed him after the game, and he talked about how hurt he was of the boos by Brewers fans in 95. And this was 3 years later after he had won the World Series in Toronto, and he'd come back, and 3 years later, the fans were still booing him. Now, eventually, you know how these things always work. You always kiss and make up. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, when he gets his number retired by the Packers, and we know that's coming, same thing. Molitor, when he had his number retired from the Brewers, same thing. 40,000 people cheering the guy. And when Counsell, one day when he has a return, they won't be retiring his number, obviously. But when, in whatever form he returns, whatever they honor him down the road, if they do, they will not be booing him, down the road. It always happens. And, Counsell, I don't look at Counsell as doing a heel turn. I think some of you look at it as a heel turn, where he came out and started bashing Milwaukee and bashing Wisconsin. Oh, I never liked Wisconsin. Milwaukee, what a terrible town. Oh, I pretended to like it. I had to grow up there. No, like a pro wrestler. He didn't do any of that stuff. He still lives here. He said today he still follows the sports teams. He's been to Bucks games. His kids went to high school here. Still lives here. He still has friends here. He did not do a heel turn and go all heel on the Milwaukee Brewers like a pro wrestler. He did not do any of that. Simply took a better job on paper with more money. Somebody pointed out on Twitter today, Jim Gohart, I saw his Twitter account tonight, said right now the Brewers are, I didn't even look this far ahead, but they're in the loss column tied with the Dodgers for that first round bye in the playoffs. Now, that would be great. I don't look at that far ahead. But getting a first round, but let's face it, the Dodgers catching the Dodgers. I just want to win the division, first of all, and let the chips fall for the man. If they got to play a wild card round, that best of 3 or whatever, who knows? But I want to win the division and then obviously win a playoff series. But right now, Cincinnati, there's 2 teams I got my eye on. Well, the Cubs. But Cincinnati and St. Louis are playing better. Playing better as of late. They went through a dreadful stretch of the season. Cincinnati has they lost on Monday. They just swept the Dodgers. They played were playing pretty good ball. They're 5.5 out. St. Louis playing better. They've won 8 of 11. I didn't see how they did on Monday. They were playing as we were doing this podcast. But they had beaten the Cubs over the weekend, one Sunday night. So St. Louis and Cincinnati seem to be hanging around a little bit. Again, Brewers are, even though they have a 4.5 game lead on second place, Chicago, they ain't winning this division by 10 games. It is going to be a tight race. And you know what? Cincinnati and St. Louis are going to be factors. This is going to be a heated race in this division. It's going to be a fun summer. And there's some big ball games to be played with both of those teams still ahead. Coming up Tuesday, Freddie Peralta gets the start against Ben Brown for the Cubs. Ben Brown 1-1 with a 3.20 earned run average. Freddie on the hill for Milwaukee. Let's get him some run support. Did not have it for him in his last start. Let's get it for Freddie. And the Brewers. And the Brewers do win 5-1. 4.5 game lead. That looks so cool. I mean, I love it. I love seeing the Brewers having a nice little lead like that. Craig Counsell, we'll see how the fans treat him. I don't think there'll be 42,000 out there on Tuesday night. I think the holiday had something to do with it, but it should be a good crowd. Good crowd on Tuesday night, and we'll see you out there. My name is Chuck Freeman. You get us on Google, Spotify, Apple, on all the major downloads, wherever you download your podcast. And, of course, on YouTube, our growing YouTube page, search Locked On Brewers. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. I'm on my Twitter account, Chuck Freeman, Freimund. Brewer fans, I love you, man. We're in this together. I love seeing you at the ballpark. Stop me if you see me. Always love taking selfies with you all, hanging out with you guys, talking Brewer baseball because, man, we're all lifetime Brewer fans, and we are in this thing together. Chuck Freeman here on Locked On Brewers. So long, everybody. Have yourself a great Tuesday.